All right, everybody. Well, happy Thursday. Good morning. This is an impromptu stream coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York, as it is snowing. I want to say first snow of the year. None of this snow is going to stick, but it is kind of pretty. And I've got a parking spot in my building's garage, which is not a given, far from a given. So even if it were to stick, I don't have to mess with it anymore. So I can simply enjoy it from the window and not fret over having to go out and shovel stuff. But we're not here. We're not here to talk about that. We're looking at Backerkit, the MCDM RPG, I guess launched today, right? Of course, it's already made. It's already well over its funding goal, 800 grand as the goal. Big goal, but it's already past it, and it's got 29 days left. So it hit the ground running. Now, we've talked about this on the channel a few times. I've been enjoying the design docs videos. I've been watching them, including the last one on, I think it's weapons and kits, which I thought was interesting. And I've always found there's interesting stuff in there, but my overall sentiment has been probably not for me. But I want to give it a look, see. I don't think I'll be getting a review. I don't think Matt Colville's gonna be sending me a review copy. I don't really think I'm in the audience for it, just from what I've seen previously. But maybe you are. So let's take a look and talk about it. So first, we've got at the top. I don't know what's supposed to be in here. I tried this on 2 computers and I got this. It must be some kind of. Was there maybe a streaming element? Is there going to be later? It looks like it's something that's running on Twitch, but there's nothing there right now. So if you look at this in your own browser and you don't get a blank screen, I'd be curious. But that's all I got. So maybe they're going to stream, or they will in the future. I'm pretty sure on the West Coast, so it might be early for them. Not sure what's going on there, but I don't know. Not ideal, but it clearly has stopped nobody from doing anything. Ian says they're not actually 100% on playing another big hero game right now, but you backed it. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people like that. I mean, look, we're all I think most folks in the hobby are, and I certainly fall in this group, are kind of aspirational with our purchases. We purchase stuff because, like, geez, we'd love to do this game, and we probably never will. But we love it. And I don't know how many things I've read on the channel and just personally that I've bought that I'm pretty sure if I look at it in that cold heart of what's cold, just logical mind, I would say I'm never going to run this. But you know what? I'm going to get it anyway. All right. Jack Kid says they're a big Colville fan. All right, let's do it. So the top text says, whether you're a group of local heroes sent to investigate mysterious goings-on in the nearby haunted wood, or famous mercenaries plotting and scheming in the big city, the MCDM RPG makes building adventures and fighting monsters fun. All right, so there you go. The MCDM RPG. MCDM's first original game, a new heroic fantasy RPG. I think this is going to be important. From the folks who brought you, and then there's a list of their stuff. Presuming everyone here is pretty much aware of them, but I'm not going to read the list, but there it is. Comes a brand new game built from the ground up to give you a better system for running a better game. Here we get some art for Zoranox the Tyract and Lord Seal. Someone can, if this is a character from one of their ongoing things, someone can let me know. I can't click on them. What this game is: a fantasy RPG where your character starts at level 1, already a hero. Probably also important. Maybe even locally famous. You might meet in a tavern or start in the middle of the action. Whether you're a group of local heroes sent to investigate mysterious goings-on in the nearby haunted wood, or famous mercenaries plotting and scheming in a big city, the MCDM RPG makes building adventures and fighting monsters fun. Fun, bolded. This is the same text from up above. I don't even know why. I might say, yeah, it might be nice to not give me the same text I just read, but, basically, any adventure story you're running in your current fantasy RPG, you can do that in this game, just in a more straightforward and fun way, unburdened by sacred cows from the 70s. All right, Colville, I feel like you hit me. You hit me where I live with that sacred cows from the 1970s. I'm not sure which sacred cows they're going for, but I'm frozen. Audio is good. All right. I'm going to keep going. Hopefully I will unfreeze, but thanks for letting me know, because on my interface, it shows me as walking and talking and doing all that stuff. What this game is not. You can absolutely run epic games with heroes exploring dungeons, but this game is not about dungeon crawling. You don't track torches or rations or worry about running out of light. You can plunge heedless of danger into a dark and haunted forest, but this game is not about exploration. Or it's not about. They're bolding the abouts. It's not for emphasis, but this game is not about exploration. No hexes to explore. Man, you're hurting me, Matt Colville. By focusing on the core fantasy of epic heroes fighting monsters and tyranny, we think we can deliver a better experience for your friends and your table. Well, there's kind of a lot to unpack here, right? In this just a small bit. Okay, you're not about dungeon crawling. And I think I don't want to put this. I think that's like one. I don't have a problem with any of this. It's a game for certain people. And I think there are lots of people who don't necessarily want to have a game about dungeon crawling. That doesn't mean you can't dungeon crawl in the game. I presume it's not that you're never going to go into underground places, but that's not what it's about. It's not the thing that you are going to be doing. If we think about the gaming loop, as I say, what are you going to be doing over and over again? Dungeon crawling might be a little bit of that, but it's not going to be. That's not what you're doing, right? It's not like I don't know. If you think about the classic, let's say a Blackmoor or Castle Greyhawk campaign, what the game is about, at least for the most part, is dungeon delving. You are going into Blackmoor or Greyhawk, and that's what you're doing over and over again. That you're going down, you're finding new levels, you're doing new stuff, and that is what you're doing. And sure, maybe at the end of the day, you get some domain play and go off and war game a bit, but in terms of the kind of moment-to-moment thing for the most part in your adventuring characters' careers, you are in the dungeon. That's what you're doing. Same thing with exploration. I presume I hope there's going to be at least that you can go off and explore. Obviously, it says you can plunge into dark and haunted forests, but this is not a game that is solely about exploration. It's not a hex crawl in the sense that, what is this game about? Hex crawling. It might have exploration, and I'm sure it's going to have travel and whatnot, but it's not about it. So I'm fine with that. And I think and what I appreciate about this is it's telling you straight up front. There's not any kind of mystery about it. They're not hiding it behind anything. They're telling you, hey, look, you're looking for the next dungeon crawling game. This ain't it. You're looking for the next hex crawly sort of exploration game. This ain't it. What this game is epic heroes fighting monsters and tyranny. And I've said this before, and I'm wondering, I've felt that watching and listening and reading the stuff that I've read. I'm not on their Patreon, so I don't have access to any of their beta game documents. I've really felt a strong 4E vibe. I know Colville is a big fan. Frederick says early today. Well, this is an impromptu, Frederick. I will have a normal set schedule stream, I believe. This is just because this is live and it's hot. So I'm trying to strike while the iron is hot. Strike with my hammer while the iron is hot. I think I need some more coffee, and thankfully I've got some. Here's a little kind of slightly cooled off cappuccino, basically, for the working man. So they're not about it, but I really feel I have felt a strong kind of 4E love letter kind of vibe about this game, and I still feel that way. Draw Steel. Fighting monsters in this game is a dynamic, action-oriented blast. Heroes and monsters often have abilities that knock their opponents into walls, through doors, into each other. Every hero has a small array of cool thematic abilities that they can use every round. You gain resources in this game as you play, so battles get more epic as they go. No slog. So the curious thing here is, so 4th edition. I enjoyed 4th edition. When I first got 4th edition, or the group I was with got into 4th edition, I really enjoyed it. But I had some problems with it, and those problems only grew over time. And you start off with a small number of abilities. This 4th edition was kind of the same. You gain, maybe in this case, you're not going to be gaining more abilities, because in 4E, you did gain abilities kind of as you went. In this game, maybe you don't, but you just gain more resources to use them. So you get everything. Again, I'm kind of reading between the lines here. And if someone has more access than I do, more information, please share it. But it sounds like maybe you're going to start off with the full boat of abilities, but maybe you only get, I don't know. Imagine to use an example, you were a spellcaster, and sure, you got all the spells and you get all the levels are unlocked, but you only have 3 spell points. And to cast a 9th level spell, you need 9 spell points. So even though, geez, look, there's Finger of Death, or there's Wishes right there. Well, I don't have 9 points. I don't have 9 spell points. I can look at it and I can wistfully glance at it, but I can't actually cast it. Don't have the resources yet. Maybe by the same token, okay, here I've got this whole menu of abilities, but maybe some of them I simply don't have enough points to do, or if I use this one, it's going to use up all my points, and then I kind of can't do anything else. So I'm going to have to kind of manage my particular resource, which sounds a bit like 4E in this, but also like 5E in a lot of other games, right? Where it's like spell points or spell slots or something like that. Now, I don't know what those resources are going to be yet, but it's interesting that, I guess, just conceptually, you're not tracking resources like torches, but you're tracking all these, I guess, personalized resources. So it's kind of, I guess, a different sort of tracking, I guess. Ian says, I guess it's on the same page as me regarding 4th edition and ongoing 4 game for a couple of years until about a year ago. There are just some things about that system that I can't shake, but the same goes for most games. Totally. I mean, they had some neat stuff. I mean, I love the Warlord. I love the concept of the Warlord when I first got it, but the problem was I was playing with someone who was playing the Rogue, who I was usually trying to coordinate with because other people had kind of other specialties they were working, and the Rogue's player was just very mercurial. And oftentimes I try to set them up and they would go dancing away to do something else. And I just be like, okay, well, I kind of wasted what I was going to do because you went dancing away. Now, there's nothing really system-wide with it. It's not a system problem necessarily. That's a table problem. But I think when you have abilities that kind of have to factor in other people, you have to be, I think you should, maybe they could have done a better job figuring out, okay, what happens, something I can do where it's just kind of not just all about other people. And the comments, look, it says no slog, but if you're going to gain resources, so you're going to keep, if you're in level 1 and you have the resources to do 1 of your or 2 of your special attacks, and now you're 4th level and now you have the resources to do 4 of your special attacks. If you're going to keep making these combats cool and exciting and cinematic, then they're going to have to last longer because you're going to want to get to those bigger ones. Or maybe this is going to be a Nova, like, oh, I'm just going to do my biggest thing in the first round and blah, 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 and that's it. I don't know, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure the no slog. I'll have to show me how that's going to work, because I think that when you have these very tactical combats, like I remember 4th edition, there comes that round, it seemed like anyway, in which you've run out of the kind of special things to do, and now it's just your basic attack over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, until the guy dies. Maybe they've got means to get around that. I don't know. We'll see. Frederick says this could be cool, but there is Chipco Fantasy and the Fantasy Trip if you want a fantasy game with minis and role play. Well, I don't look. I'm not going to say, well, there's already a game that uses fantasy minis and whatever, so we don't need any more. I mean, I'm always want to see fresh takes on it. I think I'm not familiar with Chipco Fantasy, and only vaguely familiar with the Fantasy Trip. I kind of need to get in there and check out that one, but there's always room for more. I mean, look, the OSR is chock full of all kinds of stuff, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we don't need any more of that. No, of course. I'm sure they're going to have some things that are unique and interesting in the system. But I wonder about and I don't want to say I wonder about the focus, but focusing, as it seems to be, on fighting monsters in a dynamic, action-oriented blast, I'm very curious how they're going to make sure that you don't have any slogging in there. And what do they mean by slog? Slogging in the leveling up system, or slogging in that combat when you run out of resources, but the combat hasn't stopped yet? Smith says that he called out in the video that there is no I swing a sword, basic boring thing. There's always a cool option, supposedly. Yeah, I wonder about that too, and I don't want to get too delving into the there's a little bit more here. But I think that he's given things thematic names. There's something like in the chaos I slip away, or something like that is like the kind of assassin move, I think, for moving away. It's something like oh, you've lost track of me in the chaos, or whatever, like in the chaos of battle. I don't know, something like that. In the confusion. But doesn't that just become a different I swing my sword? The first time I use that, maybe I'll be like, ooh, big bad guy, in the confusion I slip away. But all right, what about the 5th time I'm using it? Am I still or am I just going, yeah, I use in the confusion I slip away, or I try to, or whatever it is, and then it kind of just becomes another I swing the sword? I mean, the thematic name of the ability, I think, is only going to get you so far. And 4E had great thematic names for abilities too. But if that's all there is to it, is just pressing a button that has a cooler name, that coolness factor is going to wear off. and will it still be fun after that coolness is worn off? Well, we'll have to see. But here's the last part of that draw steel section. You cannot miss. No more wasted turns. No more burning resources on spells. Only for your target to save. All right. So they're not the first game to have kind of gotten away from or left the hitting. I know in the video they talked about and I don't know if it's going to be, we'll have to see, right? But in the last video, they mentioned that I think armor was just adding hit points. So basically, and it makes sense. It does make sense. What is your armor doing? It's absorbing blows, and you could do that as, oftentimes we do it as damage reduction, and I think he ran through the kind of calculation. You can say, well, if you're going to basically take off this much damage over this many, whatever rounds, normally that comes out to about so many hit points is absorbed. So just give it that hit point value. If you say this is going to, right? So imagine you're wearing, I don't know, a brigandine armor, and you say this is gonna, in whatever system, this is gonna eat up 3 points of damage every round, and we figure most combos are gonna round 4 to 5 rounds. So 3 times 5, 15. Just say when you wear the brigandine, you get 15 extra hit points. Done and done. But of course, one of the issues has been in 4th edition, and it's not the only edition, but that kind of, well, does that lead to sort of a hit point bloat as everybody's just gaining more and more hit points? And then either you have to keep scaling, either you have to keep just adding bigger and bigger numbers to the damage, or you just end up with these kind of sloggy affairs. Hopefully they found a way around it, or they are finding a way around it. We got some more images here. Lady Morgant and Lord Sexton. Those are fine. I mean, the thing is, I think we can be sure, right, is the art, the layout, everything's going to be pretty much top notch. I don't think anybody would question whether you end up liking the MCDM stuff or not. I think there's no question that is well designed, and clearly with the amount of money they're asking for, they're going for quality, and I would trust in that. Brian Smith said that he commented something about fights escalating to a certain degree. I think as well, some other games do that too. Yeah, that kind of escalation die. I mean, not to say that that's what he's using, but that's kind of one way of doing it. And it's just sort of you keep increasing a die, and that die ends up adding bonuses, or it's a neat system. I guess we'll just have to see. Now on to negotiation. We love fighting monsters, but there's more to the game than that. Certain NPCs can be negotiated with to get them to change their allegiance or reconsider their actions. Technically, any NPC can be negotiated with, but there's usually only one per adventure. These NPCs have stats like patience and interest. We also plan on rules for research and crafting to let players unlock ancient secrets and build wondrous marvels. We have ideas for how to make language fluency relevant, better rules for wealth, renown. But it's unknown how much of that we could fit in a 400-page rulebook. All right, so here's some interesting things. This reads as weird to me, and folks who are here, you guys can chime in. So certain NPCs can be negotiated with. Now he does put parenthetically, like, okay, whoa, everybody can be, but there's usually only one per adventure. Like, what does that mean? There's usually one guy. I don't know what that means. There's usually, and are they talking adventure a whole? Like, what is an adventure? Because I mean, adventures. So there's a couple of things here, right? Just on the term adventure, I'm not trying to be pedantic, but are they saying adventure like, I don't know, Keep on the Borderlands? Are they talking adventure like Curse of Strahd, where it's like, I guess, adventure versus campaign? I don't know if they're using them interchangeably. I would hope that they're not, but I'm kind of curious. When you say there's basically one NPC that's earmarked for negotiation, that NPC will have stats, I guess, specific stats for negotiating, patience and interest. And there's one per adventure. Well, how big a piece is an adventure? And gosh, I don't know. It's an interesting choice. And now, okay, he said, hey, look, you can negotiate with anybody. Okay, but I think that most people playing these games, especially to start, are probably going to go by the book. And if you buy the book, you got one guy that you can kind of influence, and you're probably going to go with one guy you're going to influence. And that's going to be the sort of default de facto standard. And that seems weird to me, odd. And I don't think I like it. Like, I'm someone that likes, I think like most folks, NPCs all over the place. I mean, look, and this is not even getting into the sort of ye old reaction and morale type stuff where you can end combats by negotiating with people or stop encounters before they become combats by negotiating with people. It seems like that the emphasis is not on that. It seems like if you got monsters, you're fighting them. And that there are just a few characters who will have and I don't want to, but it seems like there's going to be a few characters that basically have the sort of, computer role-playing game diamond over their head that like, oh, these are the guys that we can talk to and maybe negotiate with. Everybody else is just, I don't know, what are they? Okay, so you can only negotiate with these guys. So what are they just? I guess they're either just quest givers, or you do your shopping there. You just do it's just all transactional, but just kind of limited menu. Like, okay, yeah, Innkeeper will give you the rumors, give you whatever, but anything off the menu is just not there. Or I don't know. It's a weird. I feel like that's a weird thing to say. I don't even know why I would call it out. It doesn't seem like a selling point, I guess. So that's where I fall on it. Someone can let me know. But that saying that there's basically one NPC. I mean, maybe this is good for people who are like the freaking bard is trying to get into everybody, and maybe hearing it like, oh, great. So there's gonna be one person, and everyone else, like I basically say, is immune to bardic influence. Maybe that's what they're responding to. But it's a weird thing to call out in the book. I don't know. Am I thinking too hard on that? Maybe. And then we have some other ones that seem kind of aspirational on their point. Hey, we also plan on rules for research and crafting, but clearly they're not done yet, or they're not finalized enough to give any details. And then, here's an interesting one. We have ideas on how to make language fluency relevant. Well, in old school games, it's relevant because then you can talk to people. You need to speak the goblin language if you want to talk to the goblins. But if you're basically saying that talking to goblins isn't really something as an option, then yes, you're gonna have to make them relevant. It's a weird thing because it almost makes it seem like they're kind of taking a shot, saying, "Hey, in the modern game, or I guess in games, language fluency isn't relevant." I don't know, folks who are currently active D&D players, you can correct me. I don't know, but I felt like language fluency had a relevance because you could talk to everybody. But now, since they seem to have downgraded talking to people to kind of one guy, then sure, if that, assuming that one guy just speaks common, I don't know, whatever language in here, then yeah, you're gonna have to figure out how to make it, or just, I suppose you could excise it from the game and just not have language fluency at all, which is fine too, because in lots of games and media, they don't really get into different language too much, other than sort of the ancient, I don't know, the ancient kind of mystical language, and everyone else just kind of speaks Queen's English kind of thing. Or I guess now, is it, would it be called King's English now? I don't know. Better rules for wealth. All right, that's interesting. And around. But remember, it's just ideas. So nothing, they don't really have that settled. And they don't know how much they can fit in the rule book. So there's just some things that seem to be, we don't know if they're going to be there or not. I don't know. I kind of wish, well, you don't know if you're going to have them in the book, and you don't know what they are. Why are you mentioning them here? I presume they just want to tickle the fancy of folks. Look, we might have, because there's nothing, you can't even say it's going to be in the book. If you're someone like, I love research and crafting, oh great, I'm gonna back this for that. Well, you can't count on it, because they're saying, well, we have plan on it, and we have these ideas, but they might not make it in the book. So I don't know. We get some sample pages. Can I go the full resolution? All right. And this I like. I mean, it's a nice layout. I'm not super. I feel like I'm over the textured paper on everything look, but it's a pretty layout, as we all knew it would be. So I want to say he went over these 3 pillars in one of his early videos, or early, relatively older videos on the game. But we can kind of read through them. So we're looking at kind of 4, basically, I don't know what we call them, 4 concepts that I think the MCDM RPG is kind of gunning for: tactical, heroic, cinematic, and fantasy. And he has a very good video that lays this out, which again I really appreciated, because I thought it was very clear as terms of what they meant. But I'll go ahead and read this one here, because heck, why are we here but not to read this stuff? So on the tactical arm, strategy is, what are we trying to do? Break a siege, free a prisoner, rescue a captive, steal a tome of ancient lore. Strategy is about long-term goals. By contrast, tactics is about, how are we going to do that? We're going to surround them, sneak around them, pick them off one by one, kill their leader first, kill their priest first, no resurrections. In a tactical game, positioning matters. So our game is played on a grid. All right. So yes, positioning matters. I don't know that any therefore needs to be played on the grid. Okay, because I play a lot of games and I appreciate tactical choices. I'm not sure that that means you have to play on a grid, but that's their choice. And this was my first, I think, when he said it on that video, my first thing was like, this sounds very kind of 4E, because 4E was also like that. It's like, unlike other games that said, hey, you can play it on a grid, but you don't need to. 4E was like, you're on a grid. So the same way, right? This is minis, grid, and stuff. Effects and ranges are measured in squares. This means everyone is looking at the same problem, and there's no ambiguity regarding where the heroes and villains are in relation to each other. The Hobgoblin troopers are setting themselves up in a line to stop our Tactician and Fury from getting into melee with the Hobgoblin War Mage. We can all see that happening and could talk about what we're going to do to stop it. That means teamwork matters. That's why initiative works the way it does, to encourage the players to plan. Okay, you use Concussive Blast on that trooper. It'll push him back, and on my turn, I can use Forward to get us all into melee with the Death Captain. We think focusing on teamwork also makes the game more heroic. In a tactical game, you have many choices each round. You are never reduced to just swinging your sword. You have options. If we do a good job, you don't feel like you outlasted your opponent because you wore their hit points down before they could reduce yours to 0. You feel like you beat those hobgoblins through stealth and sorcery, coordination, and fury. All right. This is going to be really about the feel, because what you are doing, it seems like, is you're definitely reducing them to 0 hit points, but it shouldn't feel that way. So you should be, presumably, you should be in the flow and just going off your abilities, planning your next move, maneuvering around, and you should never just be thinking like, oh gosh, they've got 8 hit points left. And some of that's going to be on the GM as well, obviously, too. Hopefully they'll have tools for narrating things. That's always an issue with D&D style games, is as you're reducing your enemy's hit points, how does it actually manifest? Is it that they're the pincushion of arrows and whatnot? Is it more subtle, wearing down? I did always like Bloodied from 4th edition, because that was a good cue that you had worked your opponent down at least maybe halfway. It was like, oh, they're bloodied. Okay, we know we've got a cue for kind of where we are, or where that monster is in their sort of, sorry, hit my mic, in their health pool. As you play with the same group of characters, you learn what they can all do. You discover synergies, combos, some of them intended by the designers, some not. You start to learn these unique characters and rely on them to do their cool things. It's a great feeling when another player comes up with a cool plan that relies on your unique abilities. You learn which characters are the squishies who need to be protected or healed. You learn which characters can push themselves right to the edge and keep fighting. Don't worry about healing Barlaka. She's our Fury. She's happier with 3 health. Our game is not about tactics. It's not a war game, but it is tactical. All right. And that's a certain kind of tactics, right? It's definitely ability driven. So if you're someone who has appreciated, say, the OSR-ish non-focus on character abilities, this is probably not your game, because this seems like it's very much going to be about working out synergies between your abilities, i.e. the stuff on your character sheet and the stuff on the next guy's character sheet. Heroic. Our game is definitely about heroism. For us, this means a couple of things. It means we don't assume your character is primarily motivated by greed. They might be, but we don't assume that. Instead, we assume you're going to do the right thing. It might take some convincing, and there might be some reluctant heroes in your party, but that's part of the fun. You should absolutely be able to run a Chain of the Acheron or Acheron style campaign where the heroes are hard-bitten mercenaries in a morally ambiguous world. But that's not the baseline assumption. The fiction and adventures that inspire us feature epic villains trying to remake the world in their image, and the dashing, unyielding heroes who strive against them, even in the face of impossible odds. So that's one component of the heroic keyword. But another component, equally important, is what kinds of things happen, quote unquote, on screen, so to speak. This is very closely related to the cinematic keyword. For instance, you never see Indiana Jones having to find a local sporting goods store because he needs to stock up on ammo. You never see Katniss Everdeen have to stop and take a shower because she stinks. These things do happen. No one watching Raiders of the Lost Ark thinks that Indy's gun is magical and doesn't need bullets. But we just don't need to see Indy doing that stuff. We don't need to waste time on it. Likewise, in our game, we don't worry about stuff that heroes in fiction tend not to worry about. We don't worry how much everything you're carrying weighs. If you try to lift a bear, you might get the encumbered condition, sure, but nowhere on your character sheet are you tracking the weight of every item. You don't track food such as rations. You don't worry about how many torches you have. Light might factor into a specific environment because that can be a fun tactical challenge, but the game doesn't expect that everyone is always worried about running out of light. Basically, we worry only about those things you'd see your characters doing in a movie or a comic or a novel about their adventures. Assume all the tedious stuff happens off screen. All right. Well, I don't want to say it's as concerning to me. Obviously, we have different ideas, I think, about things. So granted, no, in Indiana, I mean, look, one is like, okay, well, what, you know, and I'm not going to nitpick the examples. Okay, Indiana Jones doesn't fire, he's not firing a gun all the time. So sure, we assume that his 6-shooter has bullets in it, but I mean, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, his actual sidearm, how often does he use it? Does he fire? I know he shoots the one swordsman with one bullet. Does he even get to use it again? Like maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but it's not a major factor of the game. Same thing with Katniss. She probably doesn't use her bow all that much, like when she's in the Hunger Games. I mean, you could probably count on one hand the amount of actual arrows she fires or she launches out of her bow. So again, okay, right, we're not showing us, but at the same time, they don't actually use those things. It's like they demonstrate them, and then often the thing is, those items get removed from them, or different reasons, or there's a couple of marquee moments where they use their bow, but they don't use them a lot. And then there's plenty of cinematic epic moments in all kinds of media, whether it's literature, TV, movies, whatnot, where that scarcity of resources is a factor. John McClane at Die Hard's got one bullet left in his gun, and he straps. He checks at the magazine. He's got one bullet. Make sure it's in the chamber, right? Then he straps it to his back, and then go to the final confrontation with what's his name? Hans Gruber at the end of the movie. There's not that much tension if he's got a full magazines in the submachine gun or anything else. He's got one bullet. That's a big factor. There are lots of times where having very few resources or only a single resource, or we're down to our last charge, or that point where things are getting desperate. And then that's a movie trope, right? Where everyone like pulls out their gun and like goes like, oh darn, I've only got 3 bullets left. Or the action hero, when they run out of bullets, throws the gun at the guy and then runs away, or tries to make a desperate forward kind of move. So I guess I just disagree with the idea that resources, or that it's just always in movies and fiction that it's just everybody's got the resources they need. I think that there are lots of dramatic moments that are built entirely off of the fact that we don't have all the resources that we need, and we have to kind of look outside. We have to find a different way. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's some other kind of trick. So I guess I disagree there. But I get it. And I have a feeling. So I don't know if this is true or not. I have no idea. Okay, first of all, this is just me talking. But I think if you're a game and it seems like what they may have, and I don't know how many resources just for abilities and things, like each player will have to track for their characters. I don't know if there's one, if they're going to have a number. I don't know how complicated that is. I might say that if I have that kind of complexity or that much tracking for the character abilities, then I could see that being a justification for removing some of the other tracking, because you don't want to be like tracking everywhere. Excel the game as we're just adding pluses and minuses and doing things like that. So I might, from a mechanical standpoint, I could see, okay, I don't want to necessarily have tracking everything because they're tracking a lot on themselves. Whereas if you're an old school fighter, you have nothing to track but your ammo and your food, and that's it. And wizards, yeah, you get a little bit more to track, but it's not that much, and it's not that complicated. So we'll see where it goes. But I guess the assumptions he's making about, I guess, what is kind of cinematic or what is heroic, I'm not sure I'm there. Cominius says the author gets to control when the hero has no resources. The DM/GM doesn't get to do that for the players. That's true, but I think so. Cominius brings up a point which I'll highlight here, but I think that's so. I don't know where you're coming from, Cominius, in your gaming, but no, the GM doesn't get to do that for the players. That's not their job. But it naturally happens when you have limits on resources. If you have a fighter, let's say ranger type or archer type, and he's got one quiver of arrows, then it's, as that player is utilizing those arrows, they are creating that situation. And it happens often enough that even though you think, well, they're going to run out or they're always going to find more arrows. No, but you do end up situations where you're going, goodness, I've only got 3 arrows left. I'm going to have to, but we got to kill this guy or this thing or do whatever. I got to do it another way. Or another example that comes up a lot is torches. It's part of that. Now, granted, he said that the game's not about dungeon crawling, so I'm not trying to go down that pathway, but just in terms of when torches are a resource, oftentimes you get in situations in which you're trying to, that push-pull of, do we take a risk? Do we take a risk and do this thing, or do we not? And the resource scarcity, the limit on the resource makes that decision interesting. Without that resource scarcity, if you just have a light, then there's that decision point it's no longer even really a decision point. And it's not necessarily bad. You probably have other decision points, but I'm just saying, it's to say that it's kind of not heroic, or that this stuff would not count as heroic. I don't know. I guess I just have different ideas of what heroic means. And as Jackin says, Hawkeye runs out of arrows in the Avengers. And, Comenia says that RPGs and consumable media are too different to get a meaningful comparison. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. I think that often we do too much, but I think they're making, so Comenius, first of all, he's making this comparison. I'm reading his document. I'm not making a comparison that he's not making. So he opened that doorway, if you will. I'm just walking through it because he talked about that. Mentions Indiana Jones, mentions Katniss Everdeen. This is not something that I am bringing to this, that I'm pulling something that they didn't. They in their document bring this out, not me. And I think that anybody who's played games where you have those kinds of scarcity for resources and play with them has probably run into examples where they've had interesting situations because of it. That's all. I guess that's all I'll say with that one. If you don't want to have consumables, I mean, that's fine, right? That's the great thing about games. We can all play the way we want. But I think saying that somehow like heroism is tied to keeping certain things off screen, which is itself a term from consumable media, not a gaming term. What does off screen mean? I mean, it's something we talk about, like, right, it's not something we're playing through. We're kind of abstracting it. But, I think that you can have heroism, and that heroism in the past in our media that he is referencing does use scarcity. I mean, in the Hunger Games, there's a whole thing about the resources being scarce. And so she has to do things. She has to take risks, and she has to make choices to get resources. I mean, that's part of the whole thing. Those little boxes from the sky that come down, and she's got to make a choice. Do I do this thing that I feel morally opposed to doing and go without, or I need medicine, so I need to reach out to the sponsor and make it happen? And granted, he does say that you can bring them in at certain times, but that would seem weird to me. If torches weren't a thing, and then suddenly in this one section they're a thing, I'd have to see how that works. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into it, right? Because it's obviously we have different kind of philosophies on gaming, and that's fine. But since I'm talking about kind of my first impressions and everything, it goes into my first impressions. All right, now the next keyword. So he says, speaking of things that happening on screen, we get to the next keyword, which is cinematic. Closely tied to the heroic keyword, the cinematic keyword is about how we like powers and abilities with a strong visual component. You can imagine your character doing or saying these things in, quote, in all this confusion. Oh, I think I did get that right, or close, is a good name for the Shadow's ability to slip out of melee and retreat to safety. The text of the ability says how it works, but the name creates a visual that explains how it is working, or it's working. When Sir Vanazor, the Draconian Fury, leaps onto a goblin war spider, cleaving through the goblin, riding the creature in a single turn, you can see it in your mind. It feels like a movie. It doesn't feel simply like you rolled well, but like an epic scene complete with slow motion and a Carpenter Brute soundtrack. You should imagine your tactician character leading the battle, granting your abilities free attacks, extra maneuvers, coordinating the battle. That's what the name implies. And if we've done a good job, when you read the character's abilities, you think, yes, this is what I was imagining. I can't wait to do this. I think that's, and look, I don't have anything wrong with this. I think I said before that kind of in all this confusion, all these names are great the first time you read them. When everything's kind of new, great. But after a couple of plays, after you've done that a few times, and what happens when you're trying to use in all this confusion? Does it not work if there's actually not that much confusion? Does it say like it's got to be something going on, or is this just your kind of poof and disappear? And when there actually isn't confusion, but you still want to use it, does it still make sense? And then, Sir Vanazor leaping onto the Goblin War Spider, cleaving through the goblins, and doing all that. Is that one of those things you get for free that you don't have to roll for, or is there still a roll attached? Because I feel like if you're still rolling to see how well you do, and the roll, however you do well in the roll, then enables you to multiply your attack or do whatever, then I'm not sure how you don't end up with the I rolled well. I'm not sure. We'd have to see how it works. But that's cinematic. And then fantasy, just, it's got dragons and stuff. It's worth mentioning, while everyone basically already knows what fantasy means in this context, we do imagine it a little more broadly than your average classical medieval fantasy. We like that stuff. Vasloria is our medieval European fantasy analog with knights on horseback and wizards in towers. We also like high fantasy urban intrigue, and so we're developing Capital, the city of the great game, the greatest city in this or any age. Vesloria is mostly humans and elves and orcs and dwarves, but Capital has dozens, hundreds of different ancestries in it. Looking back at movies like Star Wars and the work of artists like Chris Foss, that 70s stuff now seems explicitly fantastical. There's nothing scientific or even plausible about a lightsaber or a John Berkey spaceship. But damn, they look cool. So our setting includes the timescape, our multiverse, of which the world of Orden, containing Capital and Vesloria, is only one part. Timescape is more explicitly, quote-unquote, space fantasy. These core rules mostly cover the classic fantasy stuff. We think Capital and the Timescape will help us deliver a game where more people can see their fantasy in our worlds. All right, so they're going to have kind of your sort of a vanilla fantasy thing, but then also this Capital where you can do more and more. How do I get out of this? Oh, F11 maybe? There we go. All right, so that was the sample page. Nope, that's the wrong button. No. What did I do? Thank you. What did I hit the wrong button? There we go. Okay. Oh my gosh. Do we want to look at this one? I guess we do. Well, so we got some more. How many of these sample pages? Oh my. Well, look, I appreciate all the sample pages. I'll get the sample pages. Let me just go down to the bottom and we can look at some of these other ones. So skipping over the other sample pages, which I will come back to. What we're funding 2 books. Heroes, basically the rule book, approximately 400 pages of rules for making characters, character customization, advancement. There'll be ancestries, classic and new, classes, skills, rules for combat, negotiation, research and crafting, and more. All right, so here they're saying we're definitely getting research and crafting. So I guess it is definitely coming. We just don't know. Ian wants to talk about the art. The art is beautiful. And then there's no question about it. Let me go through this, Ian, and then when we go back into the spreads, we can wonder more at the art. There's no question the art is beautiful. As Brian Smith says, the MCDM art is top tier. Absolutely. Whatever I may disagree with in terms of philosophies or rules, I certainly can find no fault in their layout or art. I mean, other than, taste stuff. Now, there's the second book is called Monsters, a monster book. Basically, flee mortals without the villain parties or environments. Most of the monsters in our 5e monster book was all the stuff we had to cut and a bunch of new stuff. You'll also get rules for building balanced or deliberately unbalanced, depending on how much trouble your players have gotten into encounters. So we definitely can see that at least there is going to be some concept of balanced encounters, which is going to feel good or bad. Hopefully they'll come up with a good system to do it. Already in testing. We've been testing and developing this game internally for almost a year now, but that was just the folks at the office and their friends. The first packet went to our contract testers back in August, and been pounding on it ever since. The game is already working and it's already fun. For the next 18 months, we'll be adding more classes, ancestries, progression, customization, and rewards. We take testing very seriously. We want to make books that are fun to read, full of great ideas for your world and your game, and fun to play, and that takes time, polish, iteration, and lots of testing. You do not need to take our work for it. I think word for it. Come to the Discord and talk to them directly or join a future playtest. Brian Smith says, I was very interested in the push your luck aspect I heard of gaining power with victory versus deciding to rest and refresh your stuff, but lose those victory bonuses. Oh, interesting. I'll have to see if that, and we'll have to see if that shows up in one of those spreads. All right, the schedule. We think we can get these 2 PDFs finished by June of 2025, but we don't think you'll have to wait that long to play it. If things go well, we intend to get you, our backers, a playtest packet sometime next year, hopefully Q2 2024. We intend to publish the game under an open license, probably something like the Shadow Dark license, because we want you, anyone who wants to make, share, publish their own work using these rules and set in this world. We hope by the time the PDF exists, folks will not only have been playing this game for months, they'll be making, sharing, selling their own original works using this material. I'm not familiar with the Shadow Dark license, so somebody will have to tell me if it's great or not. Okay, and then on to pledge levels. Okay, here's what's on the menu. So the Heroes PDF's $40. Both PDFs are $65. There is no Just Monsters book. Hardcover of the Heroes book is $70. There's going to be a limited edition for $125. $135 for both books hardcover, and if you want both limited edition hardcovers, $250. And those have gold embossed covers and a colored dust jacket with a cool slipcase. Your book gets a little house. And then we have, what's the Ajax edition? So there's this thing called the Ajax edition, and it looks beautiful. An epic fantasy game needs an epic fantasy villain, and Ajax, called Invincible, the Iron Saint, is one of our epic villains. Designed by Cook and Becker, the Ajax edition comes with both Heroes and Monsters, limited edition books, and cloth map, dice, an Ajax exclusive Ajax mini, a custom coin, a director's screen, and an incredibly slick case. So we have some stretch goals. VTTs at 1.5, slower at box sets at 2. These are all in millions. Clearly, they they know what they kind of know how big their audience is. Okay, shipping and logistics. I'm not going to read through. Risks right now, time and money. I feel like they're in a good spot, so I'm not going to read through the risks. And then I guess the future. We would love nothing more than to make adventures, setting books, more player options, and more options for the director for years. But that all depends on how many people want this product where the audience for it grows over time. We think if enough people believe in this, this will be the beginning of something special, something that grows organically with high-quality products coming from MCDM and tons of amazing content from our community. We want to give you cool new stuff to look forward to. We want to give folks an excuse to get back to the table and game together. Thanks for reading on this. Peace out. All right. And we get a cat picture, which is always welcome. So there you have that. Let me exit out full view. So let's look at some of these spreads. We did this first one. Let's go ahead and look at this one. Building a heroic narrative. The game takes place in a series of scenes with the heroes as the main characters. An adventure is a collection of scenes that make up a single story arc. All right, so now I was asking before what an adventure meant, because I said there'd be one NPC that was sort of earmarked for you to talk to or at least negotiate with in an adventure. So now we get an idea of what an adventure is. It's a single story arc made up of multiple scenes. I'm not a huge fan of using the narrative kind of terms for the stuff, but clearly they are. So I'll just have to get over it. Okay, and a campaign is a collection of adventures that tell the entire epic tale of a group of heroes. You can think of each adventure as a movie in a saga of films, a book in a series of novels, or a season of a television show. While many heroes have their stories told over the course of a campaign, some wrap up their careers in a single adventure that takes place in one game session called a one-shot. You can think of a one-shot as a great standalone novel or movie. This game is built so that each adventure you play and each battle you fight gets more exciting as it goes on. In fantastic tales, the heroes and their foes both grow in power over the course of an adventure. But it isn't time alone that grows a hero's capabilities. Rather, it's the adrenaline that comes from battle, the danger of the hero's profession, and the pressure to save the world that pushes them to do the impossible. Each small act of heroism gives a hero the confidence and bravery to perform legendary feats against all odds. The things a hero can achieve at the end of the story are far more daring and impactful than what they do at the start. And the final showdown against a villain's forces is more deadly and desperate than the first. The heroes of the game help build a heroic narrative in this same fashion, making use of the four most important mechanics for building heroic narratives: victories, experience, heroic resources, and recoveries. All right, Brian Smith, I think we might be getting to this thing. So first up is victories. Your hero's power increases throughout an adventure as you fight more battles and overcome other challenges, measured through a stat called victories. At the start of an adventure, your hero has 0 victories. Victories after combat. Each time your hero survives a combat encounter in which the party's objectives are achieved, your victories increase by 1. So one thing I just want to note here, which I like, is that it explicitly says a combat encounter in which the party's objectives are achieved, which at least to me leaves open the possibility it doesn't have to be always duels to the death. If your party's objective is to grab the MacGuffin thing that's by the throne of the bad guy and escape, you don't have to kill everybody in the room to do that. You can use your moves, whatever, grab the thing and escape. And if you do, you should get your 1 victory. So I appreciate it. Now, I don't know how often, no idea how often the party's objectives, at least in stuff that's there, I'd be nice to see what their kind of ventures that they're producing in-house, because those will be ultimately really great templates for what they think are good, solid adventures and kind of what their expectations are along the way. So it'll be interesting to see if, when you actually see how this would lay out in an actual adventure, do the party's objectives often deviate from killing everything? But I do appreciate that that kind of caveat in a sense is there, or that little details there. The director can decide that a trivially easy encounter doesn't increase a hero's victories. Okay. Victories after non-combat challenges. When your hero successfully overcomes a big challenge that doesn't involve combat, the director can award you one victory. Such challenges can include things like a particularly complicated and deadly trap, a negotiation, a complex test, a complicated puzzle, or the execution of a clever idea that avoids a battle. All right. I don't know how much they're going to do. I know he loves skill challenges from 4th edition. I don't know if this is going to be if they're going to have a lot of kind of skill challengey stuff here. Victories after combat I liked because it essentially is player driven in the sense that the players have an objective. And if you're running, I don't think this game is meant to be running kind of sandbox play. I think it's really made for more narrative stuff. So it's going to should be fairly understood what your objective is in any kind of hostile encounter, let's just say. But it's just like you do the thing, you get the thing. And I don't really have to think about it. Now, this other part of, well, I don't like it. And folks who follow my channel know I don't like to be in charge of making those decisions over you did a thing. Now it's up to me to decide whether that earned you a victory or not. So I kind of wish they would have just said that, hey, these things you get it. Not I can award you one. It's a little bit more vague, but lots of systems do this, so it's not a particular thing. I just prefer when the players and everybody knows you do the thing, you get the thing, and it's not a case of, well, we do the thing, and then you got to kind of look to the DM to see, did that earn us the thing or not? All right, so here's the thing that Brian Smith mentioned before. Whenever you complete a rest, your victories are converted into experience. Victories temporarily increase the hero's power during an adventure, but experience permanently improves their capabilities. Whenever you complete a rest, you gain XP equal to your victories. Then your victories drop to 0. In other words, your victories are converted to XP when you complete a rest. Okay, so there you go. So yes, victories, while you have victories, you get a temporary power bump. But of course, if you fail, or I guess you die, then you would clearly not get that XP. You can bank it away as XP, but then you lose the victories. I'm kind of curious how that works. Or I guess it doesn't, not so much because I'm wondering, okay, you're going to need to rest, I presume, to get resources back. So you can't just do victories all the way. But the victories do give you some kind of temporary thing, but we don't know yet what they are. So yes, as Brian Smith and Ian have been talking about in the chat, you do get this kind of push-pull, right? Do you want to rest? Do you want to kind of roll with what you've got? The only thing is what, other than just running out of resources, I feel like these games that paint themselves, we haven't heard anything about death dying in anything we read, right? I have not seen any rules. Nothing in that Kickstarter mentions what death and dying is like, how it works. So I kind of wonder how it is. Is it going to be kind of 5th edition-ish, in which it's kind of rare, unless your GM is really gunning for you for the most part at most tables, the death, because then that kind of blunts the decision-making if pushing your luck, because there's no consequence of pushing your luck other than the fact that you might die. Because it doesn't seem like you lose victories at some point. Now, it'd be interesting if you could take a loss. And so if you went to an encounter and you had to run away without completing your objective, that you take a loss and that downgrades your victories. That might be an interesting thing to look at, but I'm curious. Hey, Dave, good morning. Dave says it's supposed to be heroic, quote unquote, so I'm guessing dying is rare. Yeah, that's probably where I would come out. But they haven't said anything, so I can't say for sure. All right, heroic resources. Your hero has a heroic resource, sometimes 2 heroic resources, determined by your class, and which you manage during play. Earning resources can increase your... Increase your... blah, 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 blah. Where was I? I got lost. I checked something and I lost. Earning resources can increase your hero's power, and resources are spent to activate your most powerful abilities. Each class gains and uses its heroic resource differently, and resources aren't equivalent across classes. For example, 1 virtue for the conduit isn't worth as much as 1 focus for the tactician. All right, so they have different resources, and they're going to be of different power levels and different recharge rates, I'm presuming. That's cool. Some classes, such as the Tactician and the Fury, generate and use resources only during combat encounters. Others, such as the Elementalist and the Talent, can use their resources both in and out of combat. And I don't know why I'm wearing my headphones, because nobody's talking to me, but I got them on anyway. Your hero's class description is more information. Okay. Bags of rats ain't heroic. Some players might think that quickly starting a fight with some bar patrons or carrying around a bag of rats is a good way to gather up those sweet, sweet victories and heroic resources. Those strategies don't work. The rules of the game exist to help you tell a cool, heroic fantasy story, not so you can try to be clever and exploit them by harming innocent rats to quote-unquote win. In order to generate victories and heroic resources, you must face and overcome challenges worthy of a hero, which I guess is ultimately up to the GM, or in this case, they call it the director, to decide what's heroic. I wonder if they had to play testers like, hey, what happens if I just carry around a bag of rats? Where do you get a bag of rats from? Can you buy that in the marketplace? Right above cloaks in the item list, there's bag of rats. Smith says, nice try, rat wranglers. Exactly. Recoveries. Each hero has a limited number of recoveries that they can use to heal themselves. Yeah, I guess each. Yeah. When you spend a recovery, you regain health equal to your healing value, which is 1/3 your health maximum. During combat encounters and similarly dangerous situations, when time is tracked in rounds, you can take the recover action once to regain health. Some heroes have abilities that allow themselves, or their allies to spend more recoveries during combat. Recoveries outside of combat. Outside of combat, when you're able to take your time to focus on your needs, you can spend recoveries at will until you run out. And you regain recoveries when you finish a rest. Resting. The game assumes that all heroes take the time to sleep, eat, and take care of all the other functions necessary for life. You don't need to rest. You don't need to rest simply to live. Just simply live. Rather, rests are focused on regaining health and recoveries. During a rest, you must spend at least 12 hours uninterrupted and doing nothing but sleeping, eating, dressing your wounds, and recuperating. At the end of a rest, you regain all your recoveries and health, and your victories convert to experience. All right, so it's a 12-hour rest, which is interesting. I wonder why 12 and not 24, but sure. Brian Smith says, what if it's heroic to acquire the bag of rats? Well, I think your director would decide it were. And if your director were, I don't know, the Farrelly brothers or something, maybe you would get a victory for getting the bag of rats. Okay, so here we have a rundown of the classes. Censor, they place divine seals upon foes to deal damage. A conduit wields power granted to them by one or more gods. The elementalist harnesses elemental energy. A fury strikes enemies with powerful melee attacks, fueled by anger and passion. An operator pilots a frame. Oh, so you've got mechs. You got a little mecha fantasy mechs going on here. A large mechanical suit of armor decked out with weapons and has an inventive, observant mind. That's interesting. A shadow moves with stealth and grace, sneaking up on foes. The tactician commands their allies in battle. Talent uses telekinesis to toss folks around. A troubadour wields the power of song to inspire and heal while simultaneously stabbing and slashing. I think the one thing to hear, and this is one thing to take from this, and I'm not trying to knock the game because it's all these things are pretty much combat oriented. I mean, I thought I was gonna have to like not say that, but when I get the troubadour, it's like nope, simultaneously stabbing and slashing. Not to say that they won't have abilities out of combat, but this is also a 4E thing where you got a whole bunch of combat abilities, and then every once in a while you get one that was kind of a non-combat one, which you could use kind of once in a, I don't remember, but it was kind of it's just like a little token. Oh, hey, outside of combat, here's a little token for you. While everything else was very combat heavy, feels like this is kind of similar. But I don't, we're just getting a little description, so I don't want to speak out of turn, and that may be your jam anyway. All right, I think I have about 20 minutes left because I do have other things to do on the day. Well, let's see what we can get to. So that was that. Now we get, let's see the tactician. Again, art. Beautiful, beautiful art. Quote here, your line is broken, Varrox. Your wizard is dead. Ha ha, you should have negotiated. That was by Sir Talfrin, Knight of Tor, tactician. I'm guessing this is going to be like the Warlord. And I always did love the Warlord. The tactician, so it's a strategist, protector, inspiration. All these monikers fit the tactician. With sword in hand, you lead allies into the maw of the enemy and bark out battle commands. Your words inspire fellow heroes to move faster and strike more precisely. All the while, you stand between your friends and death, taunting the denizens of evil to pick on someone their own size. All right, so it says, do I get the vibe that this product is kind of a second stab at 4E, a video game-ish D&D? Yes. I mean, I do think in terms of 4E, yes. I feel like this is kind of that 4E had a heavy inspiration, which I don't think I think he's even said similar things. I don't think he said it's the sole inspiration, but I do feel a heavy 4E-ishness about this. The folks who created 4E deny that there was any kind of video game influence, even though there seemed to definitely be some kind of merging of kind of video game ideas and tabletop ideas in the game. You could take them at their word or not. I don't know. I don't know if they're consciously trying to go video gamey, but I just think that video games often land in a similar place to I think the feel they're going with in terms of flavor and stuff. And so I think that maybe it's natural that there's going to be a bit of a convergence. Brian Smith says lots of options, lots of skill tree type things. I don't know. Is there a skill tree? We haven't really heard much about skills. I don't know if there is a skill tree kind of thing. Are we going to get there? I don't know. We'll see. All right. So there's nothing else below that. So let's zoom on over here. Character scores. You have 3 might and 3 reason. Give 2 of the remaining stats of your choice a score of 2 and the other a score of 1. All right. So one thing, because what they haven't talked about in anything we've seen so far is what your stats, your attributes look like. So we only know 2 of them right now, might and reason, and we know that there are 3 other ones, right? 2 remaining that you give a score 2, and other one you give a score 1, so that there's 5 stats. And they're not using like a 3 to 18. Obviously, 3 must be pretty good. We don't know what the upper limit is, but 3, I think if these are your things that your focus is on or your specialty is, and so 3 is probably a pretty good number. 2 less so, and 1 probably not very good. So we have some idea of the scale that we don't know how it plays out. And I'm going to take my headphones off. I don't even need them, and they're bothering my ears anyway. Okay. Health. At first level, your health is 38 plus your endurance score. Okay, so then we have one other stat. Each time you level up, your health increases by an amount equal to 8 plus your endurance score. First level, your health is probably at least, it's got to be at least 39. So essentially, let's just say round up and say 40. That's feels like a lot, but we don't know how much damage and things do. And you're gaining at least 9 every level. So basically going 40, 50, 60, 70. So by, again, I'm rounding up 1 just for ease of mathematics, but at 4th level, 40, 50, 60, 70, you have 70 hit points. Feels like a lot. But again, they just might amp up what the damage does to make it stick. But it's interesting that they kind of bring down the scores for attributes. So instead of talking about 15 or 16, they're 10 and 8. It's 1, 2, and 3. But the health is beefed up significantly. Brian Smith says, I think if your brain works in this systematic way and you're well-versed in what to expect from a video game type system, this is your jam. I prefer less to hold in my head and be looser. Yeah, I mean, yes, I don't get the sense that this is a very loosey-goosey system. I think you're meant to kind of engage with the mechanics kind of as they are presented, more or less. And it seems like they're going to have a fair amount of mechanics in turn. All right, now we do get something on skills. Pick 2 skills from this list: acrobatics, athletics, craft, blacksmithing, intimidate, knowledge monsters, knowledge warfare, and vigor. So it feels like it's kind of, I don't know, I guess you're kind of D&D-ish system. Obviously there's going to be a number of these different knowledge subcategories, and there's one for monsters, or at least there's one for monsters and warfare, and then presumably there's other ones. I imagine if we go look at one that's more wizardly, there'll be some kind of knowledge arcana type things. Dave says, sounds like they're just using the modifiers and not the attributes. Well, I guess the interesting thing about that, Dave, is they're not giving anybody negative modifiers. Because you can have negative modifiers, but that would mean that everyone's starting with at least a 12 or whatever the +1 is in, say, 5th edition, right? Which would be interesting. So maybe. We don't know how they're using them yet, but that could be it. Kits, and I remember he talked about this in the last video, so obviously you have access to martial kits. Basic attacks. So we have a basic attack. This feels very 4E-ish. It's called a precise attack. It's got some keywords: attack, weapon, distance, melee 1, or ranged. Does some damage, I guess, plus your reason, I guess is what that is. It's an action, and it targets 1 creature. So this feels very 4E by a different name. And I have to say, I don't like this layout. I don't know why. Everything is so nicely designed, and then this kind of hits me, and I just don't dig it. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why I don't dig it, but I don't just in terms of the way the block comes off. So you have precise attack, which does not have a fancy name. And here's where I always feel like it's gonna be interesting to see. You're talking about these like in the confusion and such and such and such, but at the end of the day, when you're just doing precise attack, that's the same as swing my sword. If you get to the point when you're the tactician and basically all you can do, or the only thing that's really whatever working is precise attack, that is not functionally different from saying I swing my sword. So I think to me, I feel like given what they've been saying, I feel like there's some, I don't know what you call it, pressure or some emphasis to make sure that you really don't have to do this very much. This is like a last resort that maybe you use once. Because if you end up in a situation, and this is what happened to 4E to me, and granted, my GM, I will say this, my GM tended to beef up encounters to make them really nasty, so they would tend to run long. But I think everyone who's played 4E that I recall would talk about combats running long. At least I never played Essentials, so just 4E vanilla. You just end up at this point where you just precise attack, precise attack, precise attack. So they're saying you're not going to be doing that, theoretically. So, well, let's see. I'm not to say that I'm dubious, but I kind of want to see it. Sapphire Ridge says, this layout causes my eyes to move upwards, difficult to rest on the page to read. Yeah, I think it's because it's got all these headers. And even the headers, the way they're just a part of the design, that kind of upwards pyramidal thing does kind of pull your eye up because you want to follow towards the top of the pyramid, even though it's not there. But yeah, there's a lot of these in short succession. It does. I think if there were more space in between these, it would come off better. But I really don't like this the brown sword, half sword thing here, and the black on top of the brown. Hopefully they'll change that, because that just looks, I gotta say, looks ugly. Looks ugly. All right, so now we have some features. First level focus. The Ring of Steel panics others, but it brings order to your mind. You don't just survive on the battlefield, you thrive. You have a heroic resource called focus. Okay, so that's I'm guessing that we're going to see the pattern here. If this is your resource, now you can parry. So this is basically your, say triggered, which I'm guessing is a reaction. Yeah, the trigger is a creature makes an attack against you or an ally within your reach, and then you get to have the damage, and then you can spend a focus to reduce the damage even more. Yeah, I mean, I'm not thinking that this is probably gonna be the final layout. So hopefully they'll tweak some stuff. They could maybe go lighter on the. I don't know if they want to go lighter on that or what they want to do to make it, or just maybe there'll be more text here, so they'll just kind of space them out. But the brown subhead or subhead header 3 or ability header, I don't know, not digging that at all. Well, that's all, and I feel like they could just do something more with this. All right, and then you get a taunt, which you can use. It's a free action. 10 squares. That's 10 squares. That's a lot. Remember, we're talking squares. That's 50 feet. One creature, the creature is taunted until the start of the next turn, which means what? You target one additional creature within 10 with this ability if you spend a focus. But what does taunted mean? And then now you have some other stuff. Okay, victorious plan. You shout commands to your allies that aid them in combat. When you release one victory, you gain each of the following benefits once per combat encounter. All right, so this is cool. So you get this. When you have some victories, you can do this. When you allow an ally to spend a recovery to regain health, they regain extra health. When an ally within 10 squares moves, they can move an extra number of squares equal to your victory. So there's a cool reason for why you want to amp their victories up. And then you have some stratagems, which I'm guessing are your kind of, I don't know, if this was your at-will sort of features, maybe, then these are your, how often do you get them? Does it say? Or maybe you always get them. 2 stratagems you can form, okay, at will. These are your signature stratagems. Whenever you use a stratagem, a signature stratagem, you gain a focus. You could choose your stratagems from the following list. I see. So these kind of generate focus, and then you have a couple things which you can spend to focus on. So you have cleave. All right, so it's a melee attack, takes an action, targets a creature, and then you can do it again. So that's kind of your cleave from 3rd edition 3.5. And then you have come on then, which, let's see, it has a range to 10. Why does this one say? This one does not say range to 10. Just sure they're gonna have to go through and fix those. I'm guessing this one probably should say range 10, even though it just says 10. Or maybe this should just say 10 and not say ranged. You pull the target a number of squares equal to your reason. If the target ends their movement within your reach, you can make a basic attack against them, gain 1 focus. All right. So that's what we get on, and I don't know if there's more than this. I presume, well, there must be more because obviously you have more than one level, but I'm not sure. And I'm guessing you're going to gain stratagems. I have to think you're going to gain stratagems. I wonder if there's this. Here's my question: is this all at first level? Because again, one of the things that they said is their focus is, hey, you're not going to get repetitive with stuff. All this stuff's going to be super flavorful, and you're not going to be reduced to kind of doing I stab with sword kind of stuff. But you only have a couple of things. So I don't know how you're not going to get repetitive unless they calibrated combat to only last 2 or 3 turns. I'm going to end up doing some of these more than once if combat is 5, 6, 7 turns. I just am. I mean, if I rotated through them all, I would, and it's not always going to be convenient to use another one. I mean, there's probably going to be situations I'm wading into combat. Seems like a tactician thing to do. I'm probably going to use cleave more than once, and then it kind of becomes stab with sword, and it's not like cleave is a super. I mean, yeah, it's more flavorful than attack, but it's not like next level. We'll see. Ryan Smith says, I'd be interested in playing, but not running this game. Interesting, since MCDM is all about empowering people to run games, and then they drop a 400-pound book. Well, they're trying to give you everything, which I can appreciate. We'll have to see on that. All right, so I have just a few minutes left before I got to run. Which one of these, folks in chat? We got the one class they've given us, the tactician. We've got 8 dwarves, and we got some stuff. So I'm not going to read through the combat thing. I don't think that's really important. You can look at it at your leisure. I mean, I like that they have the examples of force movement, and I'm assuming that each one of these columns in this layout is the image goes with that column. That's kind of nice. So you have force movement, and then I guess maybe you're showing this, and then slamming, they show you that, and then this. So those are good. And then we get some. Do we want to look at? I guess let's look at these. These look like maybe these are kits. All right, let's look at the kits because they mentioned these on stream lately. Dave says they suspect that this will be the kind of game that will look more daunting than it actually is. Yep, I mean, it could definitely be true. We'll have to see. So the Wizard Kit is for heroes who want to increase their supernatural power, armed only with an implement and the advanced knowledge of magic, providing a balance of mobility and range to keep you away from combat, as well as a boost to your damage. This kit allows you to be the prototypical mage or scion. So you get some wizard equipment. You protect yourself with magic wands and wield wards and wield a staff. You get a bonus to some stuff. You get some more health, you get some more speed, you get some more damage with your magic and psionic attacks, and you get to add some range to your magic and psionic attacks. There's a special ability called Archmage. You can use the following ability once per encounter: Take Flight. The target can fly a number of squares equal to your reason, intuition, or presence. All right, so if you want the wizard, so the kit thing was kind of interesting. So it's not your class, but you can kit yourself up. So this is a way of, what I like about this is it seems like it's a way of kind of subclassing. I think he mentioned even it's almost like multi-classing without multi-classing. But I kind of look at it as subclassing. So you want to play a commander or say a tactician, but you want to have some kind of like outdoorsiness to you. You want to be more Fellowship of the Ring Aragorn than Return of the King Aragorn. So you can take Shining Armor. That's your kind of classic kind of knight, kind of captain. Or you could take something like this, the Whirlwind. And so it's a way of taking 2 tacticians and they can kind of have not just flavor differences, but real mechanical differences that they get different attacks, different stuff. The proof is going to be how this works in terms of, so I love it conceptually. I think it's great. I like it a lot. I might even steal it in some way. The proof or the thing that I'm curious about is how it's going to work practically. So it's nice to say, and this was the same thing, like feats have this problem, at least in 3rd edition, kind of 3X, they have this problem of, it's great to say, look at all these feats, but then when it comes down to playing, there tends to be this funnel where only so many of the feats are actually useful, and other ones are like, great, well, I got this thing, but it's not nearly as useful as the other thing if I had just gone with, so no one should ever do that, right? Is it going to be a thing where we're going to see next year on the MCDM Discord, if you take the tactician, you should always take Shining Armor. Anything else is a waste of your time, kind of thing. So I'm curious. There's no way for me to know. Reading it, they may not even know yet, but conceptually, I like it a lot. So we got the wizard one for wizards. And I presume that each of these are going to kind of have a natural fit that you're probably, if you're a tactician, I'm guessing you're probably going to want Shining Armor. But again, if you want to take Cloak and Dagger, you can, and you can get some different things. Ryan Smith says that Matt mentioned not being beholden to older editions of DD and stuff, but this is like reskin 3.5 or 4th edition. Yes, it very much. I think if I showed this, so you know, some of the stuff, like if I took Shining Armor, and I think if I were able to send that through a time machine back to when I was playing 4th edition, I would think that this was a 4th edition supplement of some kind, or a wizard's book. It could totally fit in with 4E. Totally. I mean, some of the stuff would be like, oh, interesting. They're doing an armor bonus. Like you know, some would be like, oh, that's a little tweak, but it does. But you know, oftentimes things can seem very similar and yet they're different. You know, I don't want to be like a broken record, and B, I want to give them. I haven't looked at the rules. These are only just, you know, very limited spreads, but yes, it feels like there's a fairly hefty 4E influence, and maybe even like you're saying, 3.5, 3.x. Dave says that like that. They like that, at least in theory, gives the players more options. Yes, for sure. So the Shining Armor kit gives you a lot of protection. So the thing is here is that what the thing is I'm not sure if I love or not is that basically these kits give you your equipment, and the equipment, it's kind of abstracted away. So right, so you're part of the Shining Armor kit. You wear heavy armor. What that heavy armor is, it doesn't really matter, which can be great, and you can flavor that however you like. But it's also, I don't know, I kind of like sometimes the specificity of armor just in terms of visualizing your character. In this case, it doesn't matter. A medium weapon, right? You wield a medium weapon. That can be any medium weapon. It doesn't really matter so much. I don't know if I love that they've... Now, granted, I say that when I like to play with D6 for all weapons, but I just like the specificity of having different weapons. Whereas this, it's almost like you could play and not even know a sword. It's just like you're wielding a medium weapon. Like it literally doesn't matter at all for anything. So I'm kind of, I really appreciate what they're doing, but I don't know if I don't know, I just like stuff. But I'm assuming there's still going to be equipment charts with different weapons. You're just going to be able to pick, as long as it's a medium weapon, you're in the Shining Armor kit. I don't know what happens if you're outside the kit, or if you do, right? So you wear heavy armor and wield a shield, a medium weapon, and a thrown weapon. Okay, but what if I pick up a halberd? What happens? Like, I'm curious how they do that. Do I lose? Am I no longer in the Shining Armor kit? Therefore, I don't gain the Shining Armor bonuses and special abilities? Like, how does that work? I don't know. Or is it just assumed that you're not picking up gear? Is the assumption is that gear isn't really exist? Am I doing another normal stream today? I'm going to try. This went on quite a bit longer than I anticipated. But I am going to try. That is my goal. My goal is to do another stream today. But I also did not think I'd be running this for over an hour. So, but yes, stay tuned for the next stream information, hopefully. Dave says, I feel like mechanically there are differences from 4th edition and 3.5 and that monsters don't have to roll a hit. I'm curious, if your armor is part of a kit, how does magic armor work? That's another thing, right? Magic armor, magic weapons, magic shields. How do they work if it's all kind of blended into your kit? There are a lot of questions that need answering. We don't have the answers yet. But look, they're trying something different. I'm all for trying something different. Maybe, and like I said, there's things I like a lot about the kits. They're just these, I mean, maybe it's an edge case. Again, in this kind of game, maybe magic weapons and that kind of stuff isn't really important. They don't care about it. You're not going to find magic swords. There is no Excalibur for you to find. You are Excalibur. And maybe that's just the deal. I don't know. They didn't mention anything really about like stuff, but they did mention there'd be crafting. So I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see as new information comes to light how this plays. We'll have to see. All right. As Brian Smith said, I got to get out of here. Yes, I do need to get out of here. Hopefully this was useful for folks. Let me know obviously, because I'm about to shut down the stream, so probably letting me know in the chat is not going to be a good idea. But let me know in the comments if you watch this afterwards, or if you're in the stream, write a comment at some point. You know, I know Ian said he backed it. How do you feel about it? Is this everything you wanted? If you were not aware of this and you're aware of it now, does it seem like something you like? I'd love to get a maybe I'll put a poll up too, in terms of if people are interested, where people land on this. Super curious. I know that, you know, often I talk about kind of old schoolish type stuff, but I feel like the stuff that I do is applicable to the modern games. And I know a lot of folks who are regulars here do play, you know, 5th edition and other games of that ilk. So I'm curious, especially for those folks, how this stacks up. Something you want to spend your money on? Not? Anyhow, that's all I got for now. I will hopefully be back later today, but we'll see. That was at least my first impressions of, what are they calling it? It's just called the MCDM RPG for the moment. I got to imagine that name's going to change and maybe they'll put something in this blank vortex of darkness over here. But until then, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.